And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live, complete with a new theme. And thank you for the producers for doing that marvelous job on that new theme. But a growing sense of authoritarianism. Back in the days of President Rajapaksa, the then Human Rights Commissioner to the UN, Navi Pillay, declared it once, saying that she was concerned that there was a growing authoritarianism. But I don't hear such noises or in such intensity these days. But if you look at it, there is a certain growing authoritarianism. Let's find out if that's true. My guest this evening is the Attorney at Law, representing the NPP. JVP is a component member of, Mr. Harshana Nanayakkara. Very good evening to you, Harshana, and welcome to the program.
Good evening for us. Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure. But tell me, is it right? Are people, what they're saying is right, that they detect a growing authoritarianism? We have this anti-terrorism bill. We have the efforts to ban public gatherings at the Golf-Face. Although I seem to remember that Golf-Face is designated by ordinance from the year dot for the enjoyment of the ladies and children of our country. So is it right? Is there a growing authoritarianism?
Well, I think there is for us. What I would like to tell the viewers first, whenever there are people who are trying to look at economics separately and about laws separately, but people must understand that law and economics both are extensions of politics. So if you don't understand the politics behind why a particular law is coming into operation, then you will not be able to comprehend everything, because ultimately to hold political power, law and economics both are used as extensions. There are no fixed norms there. It is how to keep power. So in that context, when you take the anti-terrorism bill, you can naturally see why it's coming up. Now, I think there will be opportunity for me in the program to explain the contents of it. But my opinion as to why this is coming along is simply because Ranil Wickremesinghe does not have the mandate to run the country. He was an appointed president. Right. That is number one. Right. Two, this parliament and the 134 members of it, the Pohuttuwa gang, has no mandate either. People have rejected this parliament together with Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa. So they have no consent or will of the people. Now with IMF reforms coming down, we know there is going to be a bitter pill, as some say, but I would rather think it's more poison than a bitter pill. There will be some unpleasant changes that people do not want to handle, right? So when that comes up from a government that they did not even elect, naturally there's going to be an uprising. So therefore, the whole idea of the anti-terrorism bill is to make sure that peaceful democratic protests or any forms of protest by the people, which is likely to happen due to the worsening economic conditions or other reasons, right? There will be an uprising. There will be people wanting to demonstrate in a peaceful manner, of course, right? But in order to prevent all that, the political scenario, that's the reason why there's such an authoritarian, rather draconian law of anti-terrorism bill coming through at a time when this country does not even have a terrorist issue, a specified or a specific issue.
But there are several questions that arise from what you've just said. One of the things is, of course, if you start at the beginning, is do we need a separate anti-terrorism law, or is it insufficient to have the existing penal code perhaps fine-tuned to include aspects of what they would term terrorism? And isn't it also necessary to define terrorism to international standards? And the list goes on. But we can come back to that. The other question I want to ask you is, from a government perspective, when they detect, when their state intelligence services tell them that this is going on and that's going on, isn't it proactiveness on the part of the government to bring in laws and so on to control what they see a potential disaster and perhaps, disturbing the lives? Not everybody wants to protest. There'll be people who say, well, no, I don't want to be stuck in this traffic and so on. So what about that aspect?
Okay, fine. A couple of questions, but let me very briefly go. Firstly, whether we need an anti-terrorism act at this very moment or not is a separate discussion.
Yeah.
Because one could argue that even internationally there could be in countries with various terrorist financing act and various laws.
Yeah.
Because there may be some international obligations you might have to fulfill.
Yeah.
Right? But if you are going to have anti-terrorism law, as you rightly pointed out, average citizen would wish to have a peaceful life.
Yeah.
Not everybody want to protest. But we must also understand part of democracy is peaceful and law-abiding protest. Right? Now, if you want to bring it up to international standards, the UN Special Rapporteur, right? There are 10 anti-terrorism conventions where they have defined.
Yeah.
This offence in the local draft is defined very widely to include almost all peaceful democratic activities. One of the main features that must be there, two types of intention. The lawyers know that for a criminal act to be done, there should be intention.
Yeah.
Right? Now, as you rightly pointed out, almost all of these offences are covered under the normal penal code. So therefore, they are not even necessary as a ATA. But sometimes in order to give more investigative powers or to punish in harsher terms, their argument is the Anti-Terrorism Act. Now, what I want to tell, very important for your viewers, is that according to international standards, only acts committed with the intention of causing death, serious bodily injury or taking hostage, and there is an intention to invoke a state of terror or intimidating a population or compelling a government. Now, these two mental elements must be present with whatever the activity before it gets defined as an offence of terrorism. The way Section 3.2 has been defined in this, any simple trade union action could be termed a terrorist activity. Right? And therefore, thereafter those organizations could be banned, their protests could be stopped. Remember, we have always promoted peaceful, non-violent protest, which is a constitutional right of the people. So therefore, my point that I'm trying to make is that even if you're going to have one, this is failing all international standards of defining the word terrorism, simply defined to catch those the government does not wish for them to speak.
Okay. Now, you said earlier that this is coming within an ambience of peacetime, right? But back in 4 years ago, 21st of April, we were then living in peace times too. The Easter bombing happened, the Easter tragedy happened. So I don't think that we can ever say that we don't need, we can't be too careful, can we? We had 33 years of virtual civil war. And when that started, we were also in peace times. And we've lived with the PTA, I think, since 1979. What did that do? It didn't help us with the. Did it help us with the war on the with the LTTE?
Or indeed, whether did it prevent the Easter attacks?
It didn't prevent the Easter attacks. It didn't. Also, ladies and gentlemen, it didn't prevent those fellows, bunch of rascals, really, who went out from temple trees, marched along to Goldface Green and attacked peaceful protesters. So that didn't prevent. They could be terrorists too in that case.
Well, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Basically, understand law as an extension of the political will, as politics. The Prevention of Terrorism Act, despite it being called the Prevention of Terrorism Act Temporary Provisions Act, it was never temporary. It was there for over 30 years. And those draconian powers. Now, the 21st East attack, government had the information the attack was going through. They could have used the PTA and arrested most of these people prior to it happened. They had the information. We know the Supreme Court even made an order for the former president to pay. So it is not the law, it's the will, right? So what I'm trying to say is that PTA was used to hunt political opponents, especially the northern people struggle greatly. I'm not for a moment saying that the government should not fight terrorism. Yes, if you need to have a law, yes, why not? But when you place such draconian authorities, I mean, if you look at this act alone, when you disturb an essential service. Now, for an example, let's say that tomorrow you declare education as essential service. All right. Now, it is normal for a trade union to protest and ask for a pay hike. That is not terrorist activity. They are not trying to kill or injure anyone. But under this, for disturbing essential services, that becomes a terrorist activity. And whoever puts a Facebook post supporting that is committing a terrorist activity. and whoever decide which path should we walk from which roundabout to which roundabout, the procession, that will be instructing terrorism. And if you invite me for a show to talk about that protest, right, you could get charged for encouraging. Some statements could be construed that you are encouraging terrorist activity.
Who's the arbiter of these things?
For most part, it is the magistrate has very little say, but at the end of the day, you can be arrested and charged. At the trial, people getting released is another matter. But these detention orders, originally it was only by the Ministry of Defence, that means one person.
Yeah.
Under this, all DIGs can give you detention orders, and they can run up to 1 year. And some of the sentences are 15 years and 20 years.
And I'm told that they can also give confidential statements to the magistrate.
Yes.
Which doesn't seem, it seems very odd, because normally both sides disclose what they have.
In this, it doesn't happen that way. Even right now, we have a system under...
So that seems to be a departure of the law as we've got used to it.
Definitely, because this is placing so much power in the hands of the police and the executive. If you look at Section 16 of this Act, which says not following an order under this Act is an offence. You couple that with Section 61 of the proposed bill, which give SSP powers to make these kind of orders. Look at this. Not to enter into any specified area or premises, to leave a specified area or premises, not to leave a specified area or premises. That means not to travel on a particular road. Now, these are violations of human rights. Now, this would be fine if the thing was not narrowly defined. So, these are aimed simply for us when people are having difficulty, they are going to take onto the road or protest about it. These are designed simply in order to suppress the dissenting voices of the public. This Act has nothing to do with attacking terrorism. There are other things that you have to have a threshold.
Sorry, under this proposed bill, or this under the anti-terrorism bill, as it is right now, the president can also proscribe any organization he wants.
Section 82. Section 82 leaves where the president has reasonable grounds to believe.
What is reasonable?
I don't know.
Its reasonableness may be different from yours, may be different from mine.
Now, Gotabaya Rajapaksa thought Ranil Wickremesinghe could command the confidence of the parliament despite he was only being one. That's what he reasonably thought. So, reasonably thought could be interpreted by anyone. But the danger is this.
But he did get 134. The number of the bastard also goes to Angada.
A particular place,
Yes, but, 134, what did he mean? So, Gotabaya was right.
Yeah, so bottom line, this is what I'm trying to tell you. Whatever he has reasonable grounds to believe that any organization is engaged in any amounting offence under this Act. Now, again, you take a political party who carries out a democratic protest. Let's assume, now Gota Gogama will never happen with this Act. It cannot be, all will be terrorists. Gota Gogama, Ratapusala case, all be errored. It can prohibit by way of a gazette, right? Prohibiting such organization, recruiting members to such organization, prohibiting any person acting in furtherance of the objective of such organization. So this can be used by way of a gazette, right? You can ban any political party. And what will happen for us when democratic dissent and freedom of speech is stifled?
As a lawyer, would you say that there is a real case for the Supreme Court to look at this bill?
Definitely, most definitely. Because remember...
So will it automatically make its way, or should people like you take it to
No, the moment this is tabled,
in
our party, as well as, on this instance, not just our party, there are a number of civil organizations who will file action against this for unconstitutionality. Because freedom of speech, right to protest, right for trade union activity, everything is defined as terrorist activity in this. So therefore, it will be challenged very heavily, I believe.
And thank you, Harshana Nanayakkara. This is Newsline Live. We're taking a break to have a peek at this evening's headline news. We'll see you on the other side.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
Former Attorney General Nappula de Oliveira summoned to TID. Education Minister claims extremist political group responsible for delayed paper marking. Electricity, petroleum, postal and health services declared as essential services. And no more musical shows, political meetings and mass gatherings at Goldface Green. Is the government trying to form a national government?
මේ ජාතික ආණ්ඩු සෙල්ලම කියන්නේ ව්‍යසනකාරී දේශපාලන වැඩසටහනට සීල් එකක් විතරයි.
විපක්ෂය කියන්නේ එක පක්ෂයක් කණ්ඩායමක් නෙමෙයි.
එහෙම යෝජනාවක් આવොත් අපේ පක්ෂය සාකච්ඡා කරලා තීන්දුවක් ගන්නවා.
Who is trying to undermine the Express Pearl probe? Multiple factions call for investigation. Sri Lanka thrash Ireland by an innings and 280 runs in first test. The result is Sri Lanka's biggest ever test win and Ireland's heaviest defeat.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Mr. Harshana Nanayakkara from the NPP stroke JVP Attorney at Law. Mr. Nanayakkara, tell me, this ban on the use of Goldface for, not only demonstrations, but for musicals and everything else. I thought that this place, Goldface, was for the use of the ladies and children. That's what it said in the days gone by.
Well, I mean, that's a public place to be enjoyed by the people. I don't know why any restriction should be placed on that. But I can only think of one thing, because now Goldface is a little symbolic of protest struggle movement also.
Yes, they always say, well, we api Goldface pirewa.
Yeah, and also I believe, I don't want to say this out loud, but I think a certain political party made an application to hold their May Day rally there, and it was not allowed.
It was you lot.
Not the NPP, we are not holding. I think the JVP applied for it, because right now we have a bit of a crowd, so we wanted Goldface. But I
want to show off a bit. We want to show your strength. That's politics.
That's politics. That's absolutely fine. So anyway, quite interestingly about Goldface, in the Anti-Terrorism Act, the definition, they have one nice word. It says it's a terrorist activity causing serious damage to any place of public use. Now, probably they were on the Goldface Green safe as well. So, I mean, as I told you earlier, before the break, none of these lines are written to prevent terrorism. These are to prevent people protesting and dissenting voices against the government.
And how does this sit with the international watchdogs and the people who are always, forever and a day, telling Sri Lanka that really, you guys, if you want to live a equitable, democratic way of life, then you need to do A, B, C, D.
Now, this is actually kind of strange. Now, the only international organizations so far have seen, I believe international jurists have spoken. I believe Amnesty has spoken.
Indeed.
There are organizers speaking. But there's a deafening silence on the part of the US Embassy and the Chinese, of course, I will not bother, but other European embassies. Normally, you would see when human rights are violated, when democratic norms are violated. I mean, they always threaten with sanctions, or we will not get you the GPS Plus or something or the other. But this time around, you can see Ranil Wickremesinghe has unlawfully postponed the local elections. He is violating court orders, completely disregarding them.
Is that now a matter of the subject of further court action?
Well, they have gone on the basis of contempt, because as you remember, the court made an order to release the money, not to withhold the money that was earmarked for the election. That was the court order, right? But that is not being respected by the executive branch. They are not releasing the funds. That's why it's going to go away. So we have Ranil Wickremesinghe breaching court orders, violating the constitution, being completely undemocratic, but you still don't see any America or Europe human rights champions in an official level condemning this action. Neither are they condemning any part of the ATA.
Why is that?
Now, this is what I think your viewers are intelligent lot. They should really read through, and in the internet you will see. Why is that?
I'm quite sorry. Let me just say this. We have a briefing note on that, which has been doing its rounds. If anyone wants it, send me an SMS. 0772 300 305. I'll be happy to share it, please.
Yeah, so as I was saying, in my opinion, my personal opinion is, this is what the public normally thinks. Now, there are three organizations that serves Western economic interests. Firstly, the NATO. They are the ones who decide which country to invade, Iraq, Afghanistan. They have the war plan. Then there's UN, the Western nations, the peacetime core. We are also part of it. IMF is the economic arm of serving the Western interest. So as long as you understand the geopolitics, if America and the European and the Western world is quiet about our violation of human rights, if they are quiet, the reason is the government of the day is doing what they want. So therefore, there's no need for them to be harassed. And we remember the Rajapaksa regime, how many times they were threatened, the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime, saying unless you do this or that, we will put sanctions on you.
Indeed.
But you don't hear it now. So the only conclusion you can come to is this government is carrying out the work the way the international, those names I mentioned. So therefore, they need the ATA. How can you push down something like IMF down the throat of the poor folk in this country, right? Without something like the ATA, without arrests, without putting people behind bars, without dissenting voices being silenced. Now, IMF don't have a problem with human rights. Even General Pinochet, IMF had dealings with him too. Henry Kissinger had his arms around, statesman Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
So therefore, IMF would not care for human rights or due process or law. They're a banking. They just they are serving Western interests in the sense their own interests, economic interests, and this government is performing the job exactly the way they want. So therefore, you will not see any international country intervening or trying to warn the government to not to do particular certain things, and the ATA included. This is my thought on it.
Okay, now then, let's take another view, shall we? His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, it was quoted in the Island newspaper, warning that if you don't investigate the Easter tragedy, that killings like this will continue in the pursuit of holding on or gaining political power. How plausible is that?
Well, this has to be investigated. Now we had the Supreme Court case where clearly the ex-president, Maitri, Pujit Jason, they were even asked to pay for their negligence, but there should be indictments.
Right.
People died. Offense took place. Culpable people must be brought to the books. It's not only the Honorable Cardinal who should be asking for it. The entire country must ask for justice. In this country, there's a culture of impunity. Did we find who killed Asantha Wickramatunge? Did we find what happened to Tajuddin? Did we find out what happened to Poddala Jayantha? Nothing. So therefore, this country has a culture of not being punished, that you're above the law when you're connected politically. So therefore, I think Cardinal is absolutely correct. People must support his venture, which is taking place on 21st, and I think we also as citizens must support it. It's the right thing to do. You must pressure the government. Bring culprits to the book. People died.
But then, Harshana, back in the days, for example, that other party, the JVP, they tried and failed to change governments. What do you say in a scenario like that? Then don't we need anti-terrorism laws?
No.
Because it would upset, such actions would only upset the general ambience of democratic life.
Yeah, firstly, even right throughout this conversation, I never said we don't want one. I said it's a separate debate. But if you're going to have one, it should respect the international standards. Define the offense of terrorism narrowly. Do not define it in such a way to target trade unions and political parties. Our opposition is for that. As I told you right at the beginning, whether you need a terrorism bill or not is another matter. Now, even the Prevention of Terrorism Act was there in 1988-89 too. But nobody was abducted and killed and tortured in Batalanda, according to the PTA. 60,000 people went. So they could have used the provisions of the PTA at that time. That didn't happen. There was no provision in the PTA to burn people on tires. They were supposed to be tried in a court of law. Did that happen? No.
So basically, what is the bottom line? How does the government of the day ensure the peace and the well-being, safety of the people? Because at the end of the day, the people are supreme.
Bottom line is, you draft anti-terrorism law. It's a separate debate whether we want one or not, that I'm not going to engage in right now. Let's assume that in order to do what you are suggesting, to protect people, whether we need one, then there must be checks and balances. When there's a law restricting the rights of the people, they must be clearly defined, narrowly defined. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that you will have clauses which is unclear, and the executive can use arbitrary power without the supervision of a courthouse to violate the rights of the people, especially the freedom of speech, the right to association, right to do politics. All those things are part of human rights. So therefore, if you're going to bring an anti-terror act, right, at least define these offences narrowly and be precise and clear, so the other human rights of the people are not violated. Because you are bringing in a law to restrict the normal freedoms of a person. Then they must be clearly defined with certainty. And this is absolute chaos, because the whole idea has been not to prevent terrorism. I'm telling you again and again and again. This is to prevent criticism of the government, dissenting voices of the public. This is why this is such a draconian law. And if this passes through, for us, you might not be able to find a single guest on your show to talk on a controversial topic.
We are like 2 minutes away. Somebody's asking, two are statements, one's a question. I'll say them both. Back in the day, where were the human rights then? We're talking about the JVP action. People were burnt alive. How can you forget your party's past?
88-89 was bad. People died. But people forget how it started. I'm so glad that question was asked. It was not a revolution to grab power. 1971 was to grab power. In 1983, the party was banned. Used the PTA to hunt people, right? So finally, they did the unthinkable, taking up weapons to survive themselves. What they forget, 60,000 youth died in torture chambers and in Batalanda. And it all started how? Party was banned, freedom of speech was not allowed, they were arrested and killed. So this is a very good point to end the show as well. I mean, since you said 2 minutes, that is, when there is oppression, there will be a fight towards it. The reason why 88-89 came, not because they wanted to have power. Simply the party was banned, they were not allowed to do political activity. From 1983 till 1987, they did not take up arms. They were fighting democratically as much as possible, despite they were being arrested. So this is a good example for people to understand. 88-89, actually it should be 87-89, happened in a context. And the context was the J.R. Jayawardena's oppression, which his navy is carrying out now. And the end result could be another burst up. Not us, but it could be another burst up.
So basically what you're saying, Harshana Nanayakkara, is that thanks to this anti-terrorism bill, the proposed act, history is repeating itself.
Well, basically, this law will create more terrorists than decent people. Because even you and I could be terrorists tomorrow. Whenever you prevent the people from showing dissent, they will find ways and means which are not very democratic to show their dissent. So let's allow freedom of speech. Let's allow political activity. Then history won't repeat.
Will you be joining people on the Gold Road to form this human chain?
I am planning to take part not in the human chain, but to go to Nigambo, where there's a march conducted. Even National People's Power is taking part, not politically, but to support the movement. I'm hoping to march and do whatever necessary to do justice to these two victims.
You're hoping to do justice because some of these people have got life-changing injuries, and will have
when
to
I say
live with
hoping
it.
to do justice is, let's find who did it.
Let's find who did
Let's
it.
who did it. And only National People's Power will have the genuine desire and intention to find it and punish them. Let's find it. Let's put it to arrest.
Harshana Nanayakkara, thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. That's the way it was. It's now time for the prime time news. Take care. Have a great evening as much as you can. And God bless you all.